The Progressive Era was a period of United States history that brought major changes to the U.S., starting in the late 19th century and ending in the early 20th. The movements that took place during this time had goals pertaining to everyday person's political, economic, and social demands. One such group of people would be the farmers, who went into politics over reforms in agriculture, but changed much more than that. To give some context, the farmers had it pretty rough for a while. The growth of monopolies during the Gilded Age impacted the profits and incentives of farmers. For example, some railroad companies had monopolies over specific regions of the United States. These monopolies could charge whatever they wanted to, so they did. When farmers tried to transport their crops by train, they were met by huge fees that they had to take out a loan just to pay off. These loans were costly because these too were owned by monopolies, except these monopolies were owned by J.P. Morgan instead of Cornelius Vanderbilt. Farmers had to also keep up with farms with more recent technology, who would be able to sell their crops for cheaper. When regular farmers finally sold their crop, the price at which they sold it for was much lower than they could afford it to be. As this was happening, the amount of people who were farmers in the U.S. just went down more and more. The farmers who decided to stay and keep their jobs would form small regional unions. The three most prominent ones were the Patrons of Husbandry, aka the Grange, which was run by Oliver Hudson Kelley, and the Northwestern and Southern Farmers Alliance, who had Leonidas L. Polk as their leader. All three parties more or less wanted the same things: for the national currency to move from silver and gold to paper currency, regulation of monopolies who charged too much for everything, to make taxes more fair, and to lower tariffs. But most importantly, they wanted to make sure that farmers get paid what they deserve. They achieved this in one of two ways. The first was by forming cooperatives, where all farmers formed together and decided on what to price their crops at, among other things. This gave the farmers more influence on buying supplies and marketing their products. This worked for a while, but only addressed some of the goals, so all three groups, in one way or another, went into politics. The most successful group would have been the Farmers Alliance, which formed the Populist Party. The Populist Party, founded by Leonidas L. Polk, would help with all the legal wishes of the farmers. They would be relatively successful, having multiple politicians from the party become state legislators. The Populist Party also had one governor and a handful of congressmen. They even ran as a third party in the election of 1888. However, they never ended up getting near to electing a president, only polling 1 million votes. However, the Populist Party didn't just end up being pointless. Many of the party's values ended up being passed into law. One of the highest profile changes to the law inspired by the Populist Party was the 16th Amendment, which instituted the graduated rate, aka progressive income taxes, or the first ever tax bracket. The progressive income tax meant that if you made, for example, $50,000, you'd pay about 12% of your net income to the government. But if you made $500,000 a year, you'd give about 35% of your net income to the government. This is something that most people today might think has been there since forever, but really, if it wasn't for the help of the Farmers Alliance and the Grange, you could still be paying the same percentage of tax as someone who makes 10 times the amount that you do. The Populist Party believed that if you made money like John D. Rockefeller, you should pay way more tax than Cletus, who's making pennies on the dollar, because someone who has a lot of money will have the income to support themselves even if taxes went up. The graduated income tax also allows for the U.S. to lower tariffs because they would be making more money from wealthy citizens' tax payments. Farmers today have some similar issues as they did back then. There's a shortage of labor and resources available to workers, and there's a financial strain on farms due to soaring fertilizer costs because of tariffs. However, one interesting problem that farmers of today face is that their farmland is getting worse and they are running out of valuable resources needed to sustain modern farms. Modern farmers are adapting to this uncertain time by adopting smart farming technology and renewable energy solutions that can speed up harvesting while minimizing the costs. Modern farmers are also raising public awareness about how important farming is to the United States. So whether farmers are experiencing high railroad fees or high fertilizer prices, problems with monopolies, or problems with their own land, the farmers don't stop working because they know that their country depends on them.